Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Running the Bases podcast. This is episode 2 here in season number 1. I'm your host, Michael Garaffa, and we are here breaking down everything in baseball from the last week. Last week, it ended off Tuesday, September 3rd, all the way to today, or rather yesterday, Monday, September 9th, and we're going to be breaking down everything that has happened between news, highlights, and players and pitchers of the week, etc. If you watched last week, then you know exactly what we're going to be covering in this week. Obviously, the topic of the week is going to be a little bit different, but we're kicking it off just like we did last week with some MLB news, and we're kicking off with my New York Mets. Jed Lowrie finally makes an appearance for the Mets after being out for the entire season. He has been injured since spring training. The guy never even made an appearance in the Mets uniform. Some people were even wondering if he was even alive. But it was amazing for me to be able to watch Jed Lowrie come back. I mean, the guy has such potential to be an amazing player for the team, and for this team that has no really bench at all. We're trying to make a push on the wild card. I mean, it's important to have a guy like Jed Lowrie on the team. And obviously, if he can come and play every single day as a bench player, even make some spot starts in there, very important for a guy like Jed Lowrie to be playing for the Mets. So off to a hot start. We're moving on to something that's, I mean, it's happened a few times. Michael Pineda suspended for 60 games. I mean, there's nothing to really talk about here other than this is just ridiculous. I mean, Michael Pineda's just had such an up and down career between the Pine Tar back-to-back starts that was just ridiculous. I mean, it's just been such a roller coaster for Michael Pineda, and to be suspended for 60 games here. I remember I quoted him saying, "I took the drug because I wanted to lose weight. I didn't think it was against the rules." I mean, shouldn't you look that up before you start taking something like this? I mean, the guy's going to miss the entire rest of the season. He's a top pitcher for the Twins, and the Twins are going to win the division, and now they're going to be down a starter. I mean, that's unacceptable. I mean, I would be so mad as a Twins fan to find out that one of our top pitchers is going to be out. He can't even pitch in the playoffs. He's going to miss the beginning of next year because he decided to lose weight. I mean, the guy, first of all, he wasn't fat. So I don't know what you're doing, Michael Pineda, but I mean, like, it's just, that can't happen. Move on to a little bit of a more somber note here. Chris Duncan, former St. Louis Cardinal, loses his battle with brain cancer earlier in the week. This is very disappointing and saddening for me. I'm a guy who's been watching baseball for a very long time. And Chris Duncan, I mean, I remember back when I started watching, he wasn't really a great player, but I mean, way back in the MLB Power Pros days on the Wii, you know, I would always use Chris Duncan. You'd see Chris Duncan. You know, he's a top-notch player. I mean, he never really made his mark in the big leagues as a real star, but it was, I mean, he was just a guy that I knew, and I mean, back in those days, I wasn't really old enough to understand to the scale that I do today of baseball. But I mean, Chris Duncan was a great guy, and I mean, I've heard so much about him in this last week that really it breaks my heart that now it seems like there's so many great players that we lose. It's not like he's playing anymore, but I mean, we lose so many great people in the world of baseball over the course of a year, and it breaks your heart.
Amy, the entire Duncan family, and his many friends. Future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols said this: "My prayers go out to the family of Chris Duncan tonight. We had some great times as teammates in St. Louis. He was a dear friend and a strong competitor on and off the field. If anyone could have beat this cancer, I always believed Dunk would. Rest in peace, buddy. You will be missed." Chris Duncan was just 38 years old.
We move on to the next thing here. Dave Dombrowski, the president of baseball operations for the Boston Red Sox, was released this week. This came out of absolutely nowhere, but the Red Sox, after winning the World Series last year, have fallen off the face of the earth. And I mean, I don't know if you can blame Dombrowski necessarily, but he has been fired. I mean, he only has been with the team since 2015, and what they've done in that time is just, it's incredible. I mean, I don't really understand the logic in firing a guy just for one bad season. They're not even doing that horrible. They're going to be over 500. So, I mean, for me as a Mets fan, I mean, I'd hire him in an instant. So it just makes you wonder, why did the Red Sox do this? What was their intention? And a lot of people were really surprised about this. Many Red Sox fans, I mean, this is basically, they're conceding their season. Obviously, they really don't have a great shot at the wild card, but they're really giving up, and it's going to lead to a lot of questions as they move forward. Then there's one more note back to the New York Mets. Noah Syndergaard came out publicly saying that he doesn't like when Wilson Ramos catches his games, and he's frustrated that Ramos has been catching him almost every single start. That, to me, is a clear sign for something that I've been preaching all year long, that Mickey Callaway needs to be fired. There's going to be a lot of rumors swirling around after this that may even lead to some problems between teammates, but to me, Wilson Ramos is a great catcher, but he's in there for his bat. But I've seen it ever since Noah Syndergaard started pitching with Rene Rivera that he does well with those types of guys. For some reason, he I don't know what it is, but he likes the catchers that can't hit, but they're great callers of the game, which leads you to believe that, I mean, I don't get it. But whatever works. I mean, he's been pitching amazing. It's just been so awesome to watch what Noah Syndergaard's been doing, but he's had his falters, and he blames that on Wilson Ramos, and he blames that on Mickey Callaway starting Wilson Ramos for almost all of his starts. And this is going to cause a problem in the front office. I mean, if you're going out there and you're saying, I don't like Wilson Ramos catching me, that's why I'm doing poorly. And he said that he's made it known all year long, and Mickey Callaway's done nothing about it. That's going to raise problems. And in an already what seems to be Mickey Callaway's final season as a Mets manager, because he's most definitely going to be fired after the year, this is just the cherry on the top. I mean, for me as a Mets fan, and it would have to make Brody Van Wagenen see like, geez, this isn't working out. So that'll be interesting. So that's all for the MLB news that has happened in the last week. We're going to get on to some of the highlights here. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, you're going to be obviously seeing the highlights going on the screen. And if you're listening to this through Blaze Radio, well, thank you for listening in the first place, but you can go check out my YouTube channel and actually see the highlights that'll be playing on screen. We kick it off with, New York Mets news here. We're going back to last Tuesday, September 3rd, and, this was probably the worst thing I've ever watched as a Mets fan. Coming into this game, the Mets were playing the Washington Nationals, had a 10-4 lead going into the bottom of the ninth inning. And what do? Good old Mets, we blew the game. So that means that we came into the bottom of the ninth. We had a 6-run lead. Paul Sewald comes in the pitch. He was horrible. Made it 10-8. Then what does Edwin Diaz come in? Give up 3 more runs. What a brilliant bullpen. Sorry, I have to rant a little bit. I'm a Mets fan. It was really horrible. I'm seriously, I sat there. I was on the verge of tears because of how horrible that game was, in a game where I believe the Cubs lost, so the Mets could have made even more ground, and, that just went right out the window. And since then, the Mets have really not played very great. And it just seems like every time the Mets play and they lose, so do the Cubs. And every time the Cubs lose, the Mets just can't seem to win. And whenever the Mets win, the Cubs win. So I just don't see any way that the Mets are going to make it past the Cubs. But whatever. Life of a Mets fan. But nonetheless, this was still from a baseball standpoint, if you're looking at this is, for both sides, a very important moment. For the Nationals, it's for both teams, this has never happened in either of their histories. In the Mets' career, they have never lost a game when they were winning by more than 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth, ever. And then the Nationals have never won a game when they were trailing by 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth, ever. So that just makes it even more interesting. But from a baseball fan standpoint, you could ask any fan around the league. This is an amazing win for the Nationals, and it's an embarrassment to the Mets. It just further proves that the Mets bullpen is not worthy of sustaining a postseason. It's just not. I'm sitting here as a Mets fan telling you the Mets can't make it deep in the postseason. I have my own postseason ideas that I think. I've got so many plans for the postseason, just the way that it can go down. I think, honestly, the most realistic thing right now for the postseason, if you look at this wild card, I think the Nationals are going to fall out. They have a very hard schedule coming up. The Cubs have an easy schedule. I think the Cubs are going to make the number 1 wild card spot, and I think the Mets are going to leapfrog everybody and play the Cubs based on the schedules. But that's also me being very optimistic as a Mets fan, which is why I think that the Phillies are going to get it, and it's going to be a Phillies-Cubs wild card game. But I think the only team that can take down the Nationals are the Mets. There's no other team that can beat the Nationals, because no other team has the pitching to beat Max Scherzer. If you're going in a wild card game against the Nationals, you have to have an amazing starting pitcher. The Cubs don't have that. The Phillies don't have that. The Diamondbacks don't have that. None of them can live up to Max Scherzer except for Jacob deGrom, who is the best pitcher in baseball and is better than Max Scherzer and has outdueled him now 2 times this year. So that's why I believe that the Mets are the only team in the entire NL wildcard race right now that could beat the Nationals if they went up against them. Obviously, the Nationals would probably lose to the Dodgers if they made it to the NLDS, but that's another story. But this wild card, we're going to talk more about the wild card later, but while talking about the Mets and the Nationals, it's on my mind, got to talk about it now. But the wild card's going to be very interesting. But again, Nationals scoring 7 in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Mets. Come on, that's just unacceptable. Then we move on to Ryan O'Hearn, the first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. He hit a massive walk-off home run in a big comeback against the Detroit Tigers, who have just been having a horrible year. But this game ended up, it was 3-1 Royals going into the top of the fourth, and then the Tigers ended up scoring 3 more for the rest of the game, made it 4-3. And then the Royals went on to score 2 in the bottom of the 8th, made it 5-4. Tigers got another run to tie it up in the top of the 9th to make it 5-5, and then Ryan O'Hearn with a big blast. The rookie, I mean, everyone on the Royals is a rookie practically this year, but a huge win there for the Royals in what has been a dismal season. A team that won the World Series just 4 years ago is 50-89 at this point, at that point in the season. That's just, it's just, I really can't explain how horrible the Royals have been. It's sad, to be honest, as a baseball fan, especially as a Mets fan. I mean, we watch these guys clobber us in the World Series, and then they come out and they're horrible. It's like, really? It's like it was just a one and done. I feel bad for them.
Can do it.
He goes to the opposite field. Dixon may not be able to reach this one. It's a goner, and Ryan O'Hearn has won the game.
Ryan O'Hearn, home run number 11. There wasn't much doubt. You could tell by the swing and the sound. And the Royals have pulled it out of the fire.
And I feel bad for their fans especially, but then we're going to move on to Wednesday, September 4th. We've got a little bit of a flash of Babe Ruth as Michael Lorenzen, the pitcher, a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds, pitched an inning in relief. He went out to play center field. He had a 2-run homer in the game. The last time that happened was Babe Ruth in 1921. Almost 100 years ago did this happen. Michael Lorenzen's he's like the Shohei Ohtani of the National League. In my opinion, he's better because he's a great pitcher, but the dude can hit. I mean, this guy's going to probably win the Silver Slugger for pitchers this year. I mean, he's just, I haven't seen anything like this in my life. I mean, I haven't been watching baseball for my entire life, but for at least 10 years I've been watching it. I haven't seen anything like this ever. I mean, we've seen Adam Wainwright, a spectacular hitter, Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, Jake Arrieta. Obviously, I'm a Mets fan, so I've seen DeGrom, Syndergaard, Wheeler, Matz, all amazing hitters. But I mean, we've never seen a guy go out in the outfield and play with such consistency and just hit the ball. I mean, he's got a better swing than like 80% of the league. I would be tempted to just play him every day. I mean, why not? Get the guy out there. He's better than most of the guys in your lineup, especially as a Red. I mean, it's amazing for him, and good for Michael Lorenzen. The guy's really good.
Drive into left center by Michael Lorenzen. Yes, sir, it is. Goodbye, Michael Lorenzen.
Maybe Blake Parker didn't know he was a pitcher/position player.
Guy is just an unbelievable athlete. Unbelievable. And I've said it before.
Next up here, we have Jock Peterson hitting 5 home runs in his last 6 at-bats. You know how difficult that is to do? Well, it's very difficult. Jock Peterson came out there, and in a matter of 6 at-bats, he hit 5 home runs over a span of a couple games, and that is very impressive. He is a powerful hitter, and he hit some absolute bombs in the stretch, as you were going to see in the video right now. Just very impressive for Jock Peterson in a Dodgers season who can actually clinch tonight with the Mets playing the D-backs. They have gotten their magic number down to 1. They're going to be playing the Orioles, so you've got to believe the Dodgers are going to clinch tonight. So that'll be pretty cool for them.
Peterson hammers the ball right field, way back and gone. What a show Jock Peterson's putting on. His 30th. And he can't help but smile as he rounds the bases with another long ball. Peterson crushes a liner deep right field and gone. Scalding hot, Jock Peterson. Right center
Then we move on to Thursday, September 5th. Reynaldo Lopez for the White Sox, and another dismal season for them. He pitches a complete game, 1 run, 1 hitter with 11 strikeouts and 3 walks, meaning he was one batter away from a no-hitter. That's really disappointing.
He struck him out
You know how upsetting that is as a fan and a player to have you only gave up one hit in your entire game and you can pitch a complete game? I mean, it haunts you. You know, I remember when Jacob deGrom did that a few years ago against the Phillies. He gave up a hit to the pitcher and then didn't give up a hit for the rest of the game. He actually didn't give up a base runner for the rest of the game. So if he didn't give up that hit to the pitcher, he would have seen a perfect game, but he did. It hurts. So then we move on to the Astros, who have been one of the hottest teams in baseball as of late. After trailing the game 7-0 in the first inning, the Astros completed a 13-inning comeback over the Seattle Mariners with a 2-run walk-off home run from Michael Brantley in the bottom of the 13th. That was just spectacular. A 7-0 deficit to overcome that. It doesn't happen very often where you come back from 7 runs down, but the Astros they're having an amazing season. I'm going to be talking about my World Series predictions later on, and I guarantee you're going to be hearing a lot from the Astros, but the Astros are a great team, able to beat out they've beaten out almost everybody, but beating out the Mariners there, pretty cool win for them.
Brantley drives one deep to right field. Everybody's heading home. The Astros walk it off. 11-9. Michael Brantley matching his career high with his 20th home run.
Then we move on to the last highlight here from Thursday. This goes to Eddie Rosario. He made an amazing throw at the end of the game to throw out a runner at home plate in the bottom of the 9th that would have tied the game in a 2-1 game against the Boston Red Sox. Just, if you haven't seen it yet, you're seeing it on screen. This was one amazing throw. The ball was hitting the left field. I believe it was JD Martinez rounding third. He got the ball, he fired it into home, and it was a strike right there, nailed him at the plate, and it was the end of the game. It was a huge win for the Twins, and anytime you beat the Red Sox, especially in such amazing fashion, you've got to feel great about yourself.
They're sending the runner in. Here's Rosario's throw to the plate, and they got him. Wow. What a throw by Rosario in left field. A one-hop strike, and the Twins win it 2-1. What a throw by Eddie Rosario. Wow.
But watch Rosario spin and then show off that great arm one-hopper over to Castro, and Devers is tagged out at home. What a finish.
Then we move on to Friday, September 6th. Pete Alonso with a walk-off walk after Edwin Diaz does what? Blows another game. So the Mets had a 4-2 lead over the Philadelphia Phillies. Edwin Diaz comes in, gives up a 2-run homer in the top of the 9th. I've seen that about 10 times this year. JT Realmuto was the one who tied it up, and then the Mets went into the bottom of the 9th, and they walked the bases loaded and then walked in a run. So, you know what? I can't complain there. It's just been very disappointing as a Mets fan to watch Edwin Diaz go the entire year. Really makes you want to rip your eyes out.
Alonso takes high ball 4, and the Mets win it. A bases loaded walk in the bottom of the 9th. Lagares comes in with the winning run, and the Mets yank it out 5-4 in the opening game of the series. And this time it's Alonso who loses his shirt.
So then we move on to Nick Castellanos hitting 2 homers in 2 different games for 2 different teams on the same exact day, thanks to a resumed game between the Athletics and the Tigers. He homered in that game earlier on in the year, which is really, that doesn't happen. The guy hit a home run earlier in the year in a game against the A's for the Tigers. That was way early on in the year. Got traded at the deadline, so technically he's still a part of the game. The game wasn't resumed until Friday, and Castellanos already had a homer in that game. Then he went on to hit a homer in the game for the Cubs. I mean, first of all, what are the odds that they have that happen where he hits a homer in that game, they resume it after he's traded and he hits a homer again? That's just so cool. I couldn't get actual footage of the Brewers home run. I would have had to do a boatload of digging to do that, and I didn't really have the time to do that, but you can see the home run that he hit here to make it for the second homer in the 2 different games. That is very, very impressive. So Nick Castellanos, who's having an amazing time with the Cubs, is just on a tear, and that's just awesome. We move on to the Dodgers. The Dodgers picked up A.J. Pollock in this offseason, and man, has he been paying dividends for them. He hit 3 homers in a game on Friday. I mean, 3 homers in any game is very impressive. We've seen a few guys do it this year. We had a string of like 4 do it in a matter of a week earlier on in the year. I wish I was doing the podcast then, because that was awesome. But, I mean, A.J. Pollock hitting 3 home runs in a game, it's no small feat to hit 3 home runs in a game. A.J. Pollock, great player. Awesome to watch him go out in there and do that with the Dodgers.
A.J. Pollock with 2 home runs tonight.
2 at-bats, 2 home runs for A.J. Pollock.
One to left field, now one to center field.
3-2 pitch. Pollock guessed right and hammered it. 2 home runs for A.J. tonight, 2 for 3. His 5th career multi-home run game.
That ball is gone. Wow, a 3rd home run of the night.
The hat trick for A.J. Pollock, and this makes it a 1-run game in the bottom of the 9th.
Well, have a night, A.J. Pollock. How about that? You don't see that every day.
He hit 3 against the Dodgers last year in Arizona, and tonight his 2nd career 3-home run game.
Then we move on to Saturday, September 7th. Christian Yelich walking off the Cubs in a huge game for the entire NL wild card. That was a day where everybody in the wild card made up some ground there with the Brewers beating the Cubs. The Mets obviously lost that day, but the Phillies, Diamondbacks, and Brewers all able to gain a game on the Cubs there. Huge win after the Cubs were up 2-1. The Brewers able to come back and score in the bottom of the 9th, getting Christian Yelich, the former MVP, getting a huge hit. I mean, the guy's been amazing all year. I mean, there's no better way to follow up an MVP season with what he's been doing this year. I mean, Christian Yelich has just been killing everybody, and the Cubs, I mean, very difficult loss for them, but they've still been able to keep their 2nd wild card spot.
9th inning. And Yelich down the left field line. Schwarber on the run. Can't get it. Bounces off the wall. Here comes Austin, and he's going to score. The Brewers will walk it off tonight. Christian Yelich delivers again. 3-2 Brew Crew.
Kyle Schwarber never caught up to it, and the Brewers have come from behind, and they beat the Cubs.
Then we move over to the Washington Nationals. Aaron Barrett and his emotional return to the big leagues. This is just heartwarming for all of baseball. The guy's been out since 2015. He had Tommy John surgery and 2 other elbow surgeries into this time. And the guy was so ecstatic when he got the call. Well, when he was told that he was coming up to the big leagues, he burst into tears because it's been a long road back. He came up, he had an amazing inning, struck out Ronald Acuna Jr. to end the inning. That's quite the sweet return. So good thing for Aaron Barrett. The guy got off the field, he started crying in the dugout. That's one of the few times where I could say crying's allowed in baseball, because that's an amazing moment. You've got to feel so special as a player to be able to do that.
Is going to greet him just over the 3rd base line, and the dugout waiting for him. I tell you, this has to be emotional for a lot of guys wearing red jerseys right now.
I think it's finally hitting him right now, all the hard work.
Told us today his family and his faith got him through it. So grateful to everybody in the Nationals organization and the fans who've expressed their love and support for him.
I mean, that's a couple of years of some major pent-up frustrations right there. And
I think, Tommy, those of us who never played are all guilty at times of forgetting that these guys are people. They're not just guys that make a salary and have a number and have an ERA or a batting average. And I echo exactly what you said. This is so much bigger and better than a baseball game.
yeah, for sure. No, I mean, look, like I said, they know what this means to him, and they know, again, how hard he's worked. And I don't care what you do. If you love doing what you do, when it's taken away from you and you're not sure you're ever going to get it back, that's tough to deal with. And, you know, I'm sure he felt that way for a long time, that he wasn't ever going to get it back. But
Then move on to Sunday, September 8th. Michael Lorenzen, he's back again. He hits a walk-off double. I mean, this guy could do it all. He hits a walk-off double for the Reds in a huge game. That was a game against the Diamondbacks, where the Diamondbacks were trying to gain some ground in the wild card, but the Reds cut them down a little bit. And Eugenio Suarez jumping into the home run race with his 43rd home run of the year and a big win. I mean, just a huge game there for the Reds, being able to play a little bit of spoiler. A team that's obviously out of it. Playing spoiler in this time of the year is fun for teams like that, so I'm sure that felt great.
Center field. Hit well. This ball is gone. Suarez strikes again. 43 of them for Suarez. And he increases his career high. The lefty Josh Van Meter due up. David Bell counters with right-hander Michael Lorenzen. There goes the runner again. Another line drive. Base hit down the left field line. And walk it off, Michael Lorenzen. What a week for Michael Lorenzen.
Is there anything this kid can't do?
Earlier in the week, he accomplished something only Babe Ruth had done, and now his first career walk-off hit in pinch hit fashion.
Then we have the Astros absolutely shellacking the Seattle Mariners 21-1 in a gem by Garrett Cole, who pitched absolutely out of his mind. I could argue that he'd be the Cy Young this year if it weren't for Justin Verlander, but he very well may be. But the Seattle Mariners, just what an atrocious season. I feel horrible for them and their fan base. I mean, they had such a great core. It was much like what the Marlins had. They had a great core, great players, some young guys on their team, and they decided to just trade it all away. And they just got absolutely swamped by the Astros in this game, 21-1 with 7 home runs. I mean, 7 homers in a game is just something special, and just a big game overall for the Houston Astros. Then we move on to Ryan Cordell, rookie right fielder for the Chicago White Sox, made a spectacular catch, possibly the best catch of the year. I mean, it was one of the best catches I've ever seen. He caught it by jumping into the net down the right field line. It may remind you a lot of what Jeff McNeil did earlier in the year, flying squirrel flying into the net. That was pretty awesome, but Ryan Cordell did it better. I mean, he jumped, he just got airborne. The guy flew into the net, caught the ball while flying into the net, and just rolled right out. I mean, that's one of the big perks of the nets, is you can make some impressive catches like that where they probably weren't possible before. So then we move on to the next thing. The first team to lose 100 games. Guess who it is? It's the Detroit Tigers. Of all the teams that are really not playing well this year, I didn't really expect the Tigers to be the first to lose 100 games. I thought at least the Orioles would be, but the Tigers were 42-100. Could you imagine being 58 games under 500? That's just so disappointing. You feel bad for them. But 42-100, that's going to set some records. I mean, honestly, 100 losses in a season at this point is, I mean, we haven't even had a team with 100 wins yet. So I feel bad for the Tigers, but you know what? Maybe in 5 or 6 years, they'll get over 500. Then we have a kid catching 2 foul balls in one at-bat in a Marlins game. Martin Prado's the batter. He fouls 2 balls off, and the same kid makes 2 great catches down the right field line. Clusters of people he was in the middle of, too. It's not like he was the only one there. He was around about 6 or 7 people. This kid, I don't know, I'm not going to predict how old he was, but he wasn't like 15. He was like maybe around his 10s, and he made 2 great catches. You can see it on the screen. I mean, that's just very impressive and great for him.
Do it barehanded. Just grab it. Oh yes,
yeah.
He did.
I believe has the wristband on, too.
He does.
Now, if we could, and I don't think we can, we've got a lot of pull. I don't think we can give a second bonefish fresh catch of the day. If we could, young man, we absolutely would.
Bonefish Grill will appreciate it, though.
I'm sure they will.
Is he going to make another one? Do it. Did
he?
He got it again.
You gotta be kidding me.
The same kid.
Oh, my
They move on to yesterday,
goodness.
Monday, September 9th, the last day of highlights here. Pete Alonso with a 2-homer game puts him well atop the MLB leaderboard in home runs. He is now ahead of Mike Trout by 2 home runs, and Mike Trout is actually going to be out for a little bit right now. He got surgery on his foot. But, I mean, Pete Alonso, I can't, there's no words for him. The guy's going to win the Cy Young, what am I talking about? He's going to win the Rookie of the Year by a landslide. I mean, there's no question about it. When you hit 47 home runs in a season, you're in MVP territory, let alone Rookie of the Year. So, I mean, good for Pete. I said it last night. I was like, this has been the story of Pete Alonso's year. Home run derby, he's down. Last 2 minutes of each round, he came back, went on a tear, and won all 3 rounds. Coming from no one thought he was going to do it, not doing well at all, to boom, going on a tear. That's what this season was. He was well down in the home run race really early on in the year. He wasn't really even a contender for it. And now here he is, sitting atop baseball. And man, it is fun to watch. Trust me. If you haven't seen some of Pete Alonso's home runs, you're missing out. Then we have Wilmer Flores, same game, returning to Citi Field. Probably the most heartwarming thing I've seen in the year. Wilmer Flores, longtime Met. if you don't know what Wilmer Flores has done with the Mets, then you probably haven't been paying attention enough, because the guy holds the record for most Mets walk-off wins in their history, and he didn't even play for more than 6 years. Plus, his amazing walk-off home run in 2015 after crying on the field. I mean, the tenure for Wilmer Flores as a Mets fan, he's going to be a Met for life. I don't care what other teams he's on. He could play 15 more years the rest of his career. He's going to be a Met when he goes down in history. I guarantee you that. And I predicted this early on in the year. I just want to put that out there. That in the beginning of the year, I said when the Diamondbacks return to Citi Field, I'm putting money on it that Wilmer Flores is going to homer in his first game back. I was really hoping that the fans would get up and cheer for him, but they didn't do that. Sadly, I was like, come on, you got it. If I was there, I'd be up and screaming. I would have been so happy. I mean, I was upstairs. I saw that Wilmer Flores hit a home run. I sprinted down the stairs. I almost broke my leg just to see the replay. It was awesome. I mean, as a Mets fan, I mean, a lot of people didn't really like it. In my opinion, it was amazing. So great for Wilmer returning to Citi Field. He was so ecstatic. I mean, walking up to the plate, he gave a wink to Jacob deGrom and then went deep on him in his next at bat. I mean, first of all, for anybody to hit a home run off of Jacob deGrom, it's pretty impressive. But for Wilmer Flores to do it in his first game back, I mean, it's just something special. Then we move on to David Ortiz with a very powerful pregame speech for the Boston Red Sox. He came in. This is his first time returning to Fenway Park after being shot when he was back at home. Very disappointing. I remember when the news broke how heartbreaking that was. Everyone was like, man, I hope he's going to be okay. Thankfully, he was. That was a very scary time for Big Papi, and he said, you know what, thanks to God, because if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here today. So awesome for Big Papi. His speech was so heartwarming. I'm going to let you guys listen to that.
Good evening. Good evening. Hey, first of all, I want to thank God for giving me a second opportunity in my life to be able to be here with all of you. I want to thank the Red Sox, my real family. They always have been there for me, supporting me. They were aware of what happened to me, and they were the first one there supporting me. Thank you very much, Red Sox family. I want to thank all of you for all the prayers. All of them came home. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I want to thank my former teammates for being there for me also. All of them came home to check up on his boy. Also, I want to thank the Yankees. A lot of my boys over there came and check up on Big Papi. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. CC, Encarnacion, all y'all, man. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Then move on to the next thing here. The Astros outlasting the A's 15-0. I just mentioned that the Astros beat the Mariners 21-1, which means that in their last two games, the Astros have outscored their opponents 36-1. 36-1. You know, that's like a span of 5 games for some teams. They did it in 2. Just not only did they score the 36, they only gave up 1 run. I mean, that's off of a hot Athletics team. So their pitching's been great. Their offense has been great. The Astros have been great. So now we're going to move on to some of the batting and pitching stat leaders. There are quite a few of them that I want to talk about here, mainly the batting average in the NL and some of the home run races. But in the National League, Anthony Rendon has been on fire the last few weeks. He's sitting atop the National League batting race for the second straight week with a 337 batting average. You can see Christian Yelich down with a 330, but that's awesome for Anthony Rendon. In his last year with the Nationals, batting 337, he is killing it. And then in the American League, you've got Tim Anderson, who's up by 8 points over DJ LeMahieu with a 334 batting average. So some really awesome things there. The batting average race is going to be a fun one as we go down the stretch. But the most fun one in all of baseball, of course, is the home run race. And it's not just a division-wide home run race. We are looking at baseball. Pete Alonso is leading that with 47 home runs, and second's Mike Trout, but he may actually be out for a little bit. That could hurt his chances. Bellinger's been cooled off a lot lately with 44. Eugenio Suarez has 44. He's been red hot, so he's probably the most contentious player there for Pete Alonso. And Christian Yelich has 44 as well. He's been really cool. So, and in the way far ground, you can see Jorge Soler with 41, but Pete Alonso, 47 home runs. My big boy, Mr. Petey, has been absolutely dominating it for the Mets. So happy to watch him do that every day. Then for the RBI race, Freddie Freeman leads this RBI race with 116. Josh Bell and Anthony Rendon tied for second with 114. Jose Abreu with 112. Eduardo Escobar 110. Pete Alonso 109, and so on and so forth. RBI race is pretty fun as well. But I mean, really, the everyone's eyes are stuck on the home run race in the National League and really on all of baseball. That's something fun to watch. Then I want to take a peek here at the ERA leaders. Hyunjin Ryu is still sitting atop the ERA leaders with a 2.45 ERA. His ERA keeps going up. Then it goes Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Mike Soroka, and Jacob deGrom rounding out the top 5. I mean, a lot of great pitchers this year. Most people are having a little bit worse seasons than last year thanks to the baseballs being a little bit happy, home run happy this year. But I mean, it's been an amazing season for a lot of pitchers. The first pitcher to reach 200 innings pitched this year was Justin Verlander. Did that in his last start. He's sitting with exactly 200 innings right now. And then we've got a few guys following him. So then the next thing I want to look at is most home runs in the league. The funny thing is the number one guy, Matt Boyd's actually having a really good season for the Detroit Tigers. He's having a 4.57 ERA, but don't let that fool you. The guy's only got a 1.19 whip. That's actually not that horrible. I mean, if you're really on a bad team, it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to have a low ERA. So that's pretty fun to note there. So that's it for the batting and pitching leaders. Then we're going to move on to hitter of the week and pitcher of the week. A lot of great candidates here, but for me, the hitter of the week is going to have to go to Ketel Marte, the Arizona Diamondbacks, batting .478 with 3 homers and 10 RBIs. I mean, the guy's been on a tear. He's making a push for MVP status this year. He got shut out 0-for-4 last night with 4 strikeouts against the Mets, that may actually really affect that chance. But I mean, an 0-for-4 game for a guy like this really, I mean, you could see his stat line for the last 7 days. Imagine if he didn't go 0-for-4, he'd probably have an over 500 batting average. So I'm not going to let that 0-for-4 harm him because, I mean, I needed to point out what Ketel Marte has been doing. Then move over to the pitcher of the week for the St. Louis Cardinals, Jack Flaherty, the all of a sudden top pitcher on that team. In his last 16 1/3 innings, he has 0 earned runs allowed, 18 strikeouts, and a .5 whip. I mean, I don't know where Jack Flaherty's coming out of, but this guy's been on top of his game. Pitching in a very difficult NL Central, going against the Brewers and the Cubs. It's not easy to go out and do that, and he did really great things. So good for Jack Flaherty. I mean, really, there's a lot of pitchers that I could have picked for this, but Jack Flaherty stood out more than all the others. And we're going to move on to the team of the week. I realized last week I didn't put pitchers in this, which I intended on. So this week we're going to throw in relievers and closers, as well as a starting pitcher. But we have to get there once we get through the lineup, and we kick that off with the catcher position as JT Realmuto is your catcher of the week, batting .423 with 3 home runs, 8 RBIs. It's been a good week for him. Obviously, one of those 3 home runs came off of Edwin Diaz, but a great week for him. Really, nobody else in the catcher position has had quite the week. Last week, it went to Yadier Molina, so this week going to JT Realmuto. Then we move along with the first baseman of the week. It's going to my man, Big Petey. Pete Alonso batting .370 with 4 homers and 7 RBIs. There's really nobody else that could even come close to that. There hasn't been a great week for first baseman really at all this week. It's not just my bias here. I mean, there's really nobody else who did better. I would pick somebody if they were better. But Pete Alonso, an amazing week. 4 home runs in a matter of a week is not easy to do. There's actually a few guys on this list with 4 home runs in their last week. So we've got quite the powerful bunch of guys here on this team of the week. Not a team you'd want to face. Then we move over to second base. This is Ketel Marte, and we already mentioned his stats a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate, .478 with 3 homers and 10 RBIs. That's a pretty impressive stat line over the matter of a week. Then move over to shortstop, a guy who is probably, I'm going to deem him as the best hitter on this team, Eugenio Suarez with 4 homers and 8 RBIs. The only reason why I didn't put him over Ketel Marte is just because, I mean, Ketel Marte is playing in a much bigger spot, and he's been much more important for his team all year long than Eugenio Suarez is. There's a very thin line for why I didn't pick Suarez, but I think Ketel Marte deserves it just a little bit more. But Suarez deserves this spot on the team of the week, batting with .500 in his last week. He hasn't walked. He's got a .500 on base percentage, which means that he's only hit. But I mean, I can't complain. He's got 4 homers and 8 RBIs. The guy's out of his mind. I don't know what he's doing out there, but it's working. So good for Eugenio Suarez. Then we move over to the shortstop position. Tim Anderson batting .417 in the last week. That's why you can see him atop of the American League batting race. I mean, when you're batting .417 in a matter of 7 days, there's no wonder. But 2 homers and 5 RBIs is not really why I picked him here. He's got the highest batting average, and man, is it standing out. But the highest batting average on this entire team goes to Austin Meadows with a .526 batting average in his last week for the Tampa Bay Rays, which is going absolutely unnoticed, with 3 homers, 6 RBIs. But the .591 on base percentage is really an amazing note there. Having a .591 on base percentage means that you got on almost 60% of your at-bats you got on base. That's impressive. I mean, the Rays have a bright future, especially with Austin Meadows in the core of that. I mean, he's a guy who he's got such a bright future, having an amazing year. He could even win Rookie of the Year. In my opinion, he should. He's having a great year. But Austin Meadows, left fielder of the week. Center fielder of the week is Mookie Betts, batting .357 with 4 homers and 7 RBIs. I mean, what can't Mookie Betts do? Then we move on to right field. Nick Castellanos is the right fielder of the week, batting .393. I mean, I believe he was the right fielder of the week last week too. I mean, there's no question about it. He has been so good. He actually was not the right fielder of the week. It was Aaron Judge, but that's right. He didn't have a great week the week before. But this past week for Nick Castellanos has just been really, it's basically what he's been doing with the Cubs. He's been tearing it up. He's been hitting a lot of home runs, 4 home runs in a matter of a week. I said it earlier with Pete Alonso. That's not easy to do. And he's done it with ease. I mean, it's spectacular what he's been able to do. Starting pitcher of the week, it's obviously going to be Jack Flaherty because he was my pitcher of the week. But the reliever of the week is Diego Castillo, reliever for the Tampa Bay Rays, with a 5 2/3 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, a 0 ERA, and a .4 WHIP. That's quite the impressive line for anybody. But I mean, for the Rays, who are making a serious push for that wild card in the American League, it's got to be spectacular for the Rays fans to be able to see such a great pitcher. I mean, I haven't gotten to see him pitch yet, but I have seen a bit of highlights. I mean, that bullpen in Tampa Bay is electric. I mean, I can't really put it any other way. They've got some crazy arms out there. I mean, it's been a great year for the Rays, and they're looking to make that wild card their number one priority. And then the closer of the week, the thing I'm going to give for a closer of the week is if they have more than 1 save, they count as a closer, which is why Liam Hendriks, who's typically not a closer, is getting this mark. But he had 2 saves in the week. But the reason why he's here, he's got a 0 ERA and a 0 WHIP. In 5 2/3 innings, he hasn't given up a base runner in the last week. That's awesome. So the Athletics have a really great reliever there in Liam Hendriks. We've got 2 things left that I want to talk about. We're going to go to the division leaders. Obviously going to talk about the divisionally, and then the wild card standings are what everyone's looking at right now. But we're getting close to some clinching numbers. We've got a lot of teams who have the ability to clinch within this next week. So by the time I'm back, we may have a couple guys who have actually gotten that. But we're starting it off with the National League East. The Braves are on top of that by 9.5 games. Their magic numbers down to 10, with the Nationals 9.5 back of them. They're 90-55. They have the second best record in the National League. So that is very, very cool. I just got a little bit of an update here. Andy Martino just tweeted that Noah Syndergaard denied he was ever livid about Wilson Ramos catching him, and he says he's very unhappy any of it got out. So, change of topic here. That's interesting. But what that does mean is that Noah Syndergaard isn't happy about it. He's just very, very disappointed that that got out into the public. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. So we'll have to see how that goes. But back to the National League East, the Braves really have that locked up. I mean, it's just a matter of time before they clinch that division. Then the NL Central, this is the Cardinals division all the way, in my opinion. The Cardinals are 4 games up on the Cubs, who are just not playing as well as the Cardinals are. It's very hard to play as well as they have been, but the Cardinals have a 16 for their magic number. I mean, it could really go any way, but I just think that the way the Cardinals are playing right now, and the Cubs have a very easy record, very easy schedule for the rest of the year, but I just don't think there's any knocking down on the Cardinals. But then we go over, as I mentioned before, to the National League West, where the Dodgers can clinch that division tonight. They're 17.5 up on the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they're welcome to that thanks to the Mets beating out the Diamondbacks last night, that their magic number has dropped down to 1. So that means that with a win tonight, they would guarantee their spot as the National League West champions. Or if they lose and the Mets beat out the Diamondbacks, which is also a possibility. But as I mentioned earlier, the Dodgers are playing the Orioles, so they're going to clinch. But I mean, still, they have the best record in the National League. They've lost that best record in baseball because of a more rough week that they've been on. But I mean, there's really no debating that the Dodgers have. I mean, they basically have had this clinched up all year. But the reign that the Dodgers have been on is it's been spectacular and great for them. Then we move over to the American League East, and the New York Yankees are sitting atop the AL East by 9 games with a magic number of 9. That is a very awesome thing for them. I mean, as a Mets fan, it's hard to watch the Yankees do well, but you know what? You heard Ben say it last week. The Yankees just aren't going to get it done in the postseason this year, which is disappointing for them. But you know what? Not disappointing for me. So they are most likely going to clinch in this next week, but the Rays have been playing very well too. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games, so they may not. We may be seeing the Yankees with them. I'm going to make a prediction right now that the Yankees' magic number next time out is going to be 5. Just going to put that out there. It's going to be 5. I think the Rays are going to have a great week and the Yankees aren't going to be able to get it done. So then we move over to the AL Central, and it's physically impossible for this one to be clinched up next week. Actually, it's technically not. If the Twins win all 7 and the Indians lose all 7, I mean, it's possible, but probably not going to happen. That's the only way in which the Twins can clinch that division, with the magic number for the Indians to be eliminated is 14. The Indians are 5 games back right now, and probably the most exciting division in baseball right there, with the Twins just absolutely tearing it up this year. I mean, I predicted that before the season started. They've been living up to that, and they have dominated the Indians, who have dominated that division for a long time. Then we go over to the last division in baseball. This is the AL West, in which the Houston Astros are 10.5 up on the Oakland Athletics. They are at a magic number of 8 right now, which means that they very well could be clinched by the time we come back. But again, the Athletics have been playing very well as of late. I'm going to make a prediction that their number is going to be either 2 or 3. It's going to be a really great stretch, but there's really no question about the only division in baseball that there are 2 divisions in baseball that have more than one team that can actually clinch it mathematically. It's the NL East and the NL Central. The NL Central is the only division in baseball where all 5 technically still have a chance, because the Pirates only have a magic number of 1 to be eliminated. So really awesome for them. These guys are just going out there. They are tearing it up. They're having themselves a fun time. And then we roll over to the wild card. Both wild card races are exciting. The American League wild card has stayed exciting in the last week, which was even closer when we talk about it. But I want to start off with the National League wild card. I spoke a lot before about it, so I'm not going to talk a ton about it right now. But the Nationals lead it by 2.5 games over the Cubs. They are 79-63. And then the Brewers are 2 games behind the Cubs. The Diamondbacks are 2.5 games behind the Cubs. The Phillies 3 back, and the Mets 4 back. Everybody else is really far away. But I spoke about it before. I think this is going to be a very interesting final push. The Nationals have by far the hardest schedule out of all of these teams. The Mets have a relatively easier schedule if you look at it, but I think the easiest schedule for all of these teams is the Cubs, especially the way they have been playing. I think it's going to go down that the Cubs are going to end up taking the first place spot in this wild card. The Nationals are going to drop out of it, and some other team is going to hop ahead. So leaves a lot to be thought about, a lot to talk about here between all these teams. It's been a crazy wild card, and the standings are virtually exactly where they were last week when we spoke about it. The Mets were 4 back. So anything can happen. I said last week that at this point in the season, we could have seen a few of these teams be completely out of this race, but the Nationals, with a more rough week in this past 7 days, they have actually kind of lost their solid grasp on first. They are at risk of not being in first place right now. So it's going to be one crazy wild card push for the National League, but the American League is going to be crazy too. The only thing is there's only 3 teams involved. You've got the Tampa Bay Rays, who are leading by 1.5 games over the Athletics, who are a 0.5 game over the Indians. That's right. The Indians are not in a postseason spot for the first time all year long. They're a 0.5 game out now. They're trailing the Athletics. That's the biggest thing that's changed. I believe they were first place in the wild card last week. They've dropped down now. They're 5-5 in their last 10. The Rays are 9-1 in their last 10, and a 5-game winning streak. This is going to be one heck of a push for all of these teams. The Indians are lucky that the Athletics got beaten up on yesterday, because they were 1.5 games out, and now it's a little bit closer. So this is just going to be one final amazing push. I mean, everyone has their eyes on the wild card. There's no question about it. The wild card is what everyone's looking at. The wild card is what is happening in all of baseball. That's the exciting thing. But then I want to talk a little bit about my World Series predictions. We're in the topic of the week right now, and every week I'm going to have a different topic that I want to talk about through baseball. Last week I wanted to talk about some really hot hitters over the last month, and then this week we're going to talk about my World Series predictions. I spoke about this last night with one of my friends that I think there are 4 teams right now who have the ability to win this World Series. And I think on the National League side, it's going to be interesting. But I think in the National League side, it's going to be between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. I think that the way everything looks right now, the Dodgers and the Cardinals are 2 great teams in the National League that have just been tearing it up. The Dodgers, obviously, a little bit more. But the Dodgers, the problem with the Dodgers is that their bullpen is not great. The Cardinals have a great pitching staff, but I think, honestly, it's going to either be the Dodgers or the Cardinals. I'm leaning a lot towards the Dodgers, but in order to have it not be a one-sided thing, I want to throw the Cardinals in there. I had the Cardinals predicted to make it to the World Series, and that is held true so far. So I think the Cardinals are going to really have a fun time right now going into this final stretch. We'll have to wait and see. But then we move over to the American League side, and for me, there's 2 teams right now that are really in it, and one is blaring out at me, and it's the Houston Astros. They're 95-50. I'm not counting the Yankees here. I don't think the Yankees have what it takes. They don't have the good pitching that'll get them through a division series. I really think I think that the Yankees are going to be knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. That's my prediction. But I mean, that's going to be one interesting playoff race, but we will have to wait and see who is going to go head to head. I mean, they probably will be going against the Twins, and I think the Twins are better than the Yankees, which is why I think the Twins are the other team you could look at in that American League. They have an amazing offense. They're probably the only offense that could be potent enough to maybe out-hit the Astros. But the Astros have such an amazing pitching staff. I mean, look at the Astros pitching staff. There's so many great pitchers there. You can't tell me that the Astros are not going to be a force in that entire just postseason. With their pitching, I mean, we're getting to a point now where the Astros of this year are looking like the Red Sox of last year, where they were almost a lock to win the World Series going into the postseason. So that's going to do it for this week. We've got a lot that we talked about, but next week's going to hopefully be even more exciting with teams that are going to clinch. I'm going to have my very first guest on the podcast, I'm hoping, which will be also a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody, for watching. I want to thank Blaze Radio for giving me this opportunity. Obviously, an amazing experience for me to be able to be a part of this for Blaze Radio. Thank you, everybody that's listening to this on YouTube. I hope you all had a great time. I hope you had a great week. And I want to thank everybody that contributed to this podcast setup. And I will see you all next week.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.